Can the Royals still be interesting if they're not a true contender? I'll give you my opinion next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is our second episode of the day on Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I am your host, Jack Johnson, and you can always find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. You can also catch us on wherever you listen to podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. For the first-time listeners, usually we don't bring you 2 episodes in one day, but since I didn't have one yesterday, I wanted to make things up to everybody and give you 2 episodes of work here, as well as getting the Royals Postcast back up, which is hosted by Seth Lugo. That's already on our channel, so you really can't miss anything if you follow us on YouTube, have those notifications turned on. I'll be bringing you episodes Monday through Friday. Friday being our Mailbag Friday, where you can be incorporated into the episode. And then the Royals Postcast comes to you every single day for each and every Royals game. Now, before we get started, I want to tell you that this episode, like our first one earlier in the evening, is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So get started today with FanDuel. Not as fun to be talking about tonight's game after what happened in Game 1 at Wrigley Field, which was a dominating 12-4 win for Kansas City. Tonight, this game was just really not that entertaining. You had Rich Hill starting. That gave this game, I wouldn't say buzz. That's not the right word to use. Maybe some extra flair to it. You got a storyline going into the game. Yes, this series is important for the Royals. It's important for the Cubs, but to have a 45-year-old on the mound, it did maybe mean a little bit more of these 3 games. You'll remember that game a lot. I would like to say that we'll remember, Monday's game a lot more and what that offense did. But I think from a national baseball perception, people are going to remember the game that Rich Hill started. So you had a little bit of that feel to it. Good for him. He didn't get bombed in this start, but he didn't get any run support, so it didn't matter if he threw 9 innings or 8 innings, a 1-run ball. The Royals would have lost anyway. But we'll talk about him in the second segment. This first segment is more so tailored to the people out there that are struggling with this season as a whole, because I see it nearly every night. Last year, I'm not going to say it bothered me because I never have any issue with fans expressing how they feel. I guess last year, though, if I was being brutally honest, I was more so invested in what everybody had to say from a night-to-night basis. And, of course, when you do a podcast like this, you don't want to hear people saying that, oh, I'm done with the team. I don't want to watch them anymore. I'm already on the football season. Because whether you like Royals baseball or not, we're going to continue doing this 5 days a week until, I want to say, the end of December or January. Then we still do 3 days a week. So if you followed along long enough, you would know that we're constantly bringing you stuff. So, yeah, it was never great to hear if people were done with the team and they wanted to jump ship and they didn't really care about what happened anymore. And last year was more of a different story because that team was firmly in a playoff spot for the majority of the second half and for the majority of the first half. They even were in first place of their own division at the end of August with 1 month to go. And yet last year, you'd still have times and stretches where people were incredibly upset. And as I've said many times before about baseball, it is a tough sport to remain level-headed with. None of us can be perfectly level-headed when watching your team. When you have a great win like Monday, you get super high with it, and you feel like the best is yet to come. This is going to be the game that they take off, and when they get shut out like they did tonight, feels terrible. Feels like you just wasted 3 hours of watching that game. And that's how it's felt for a lot of this season. And, I've never really agreed with the, if you sat through the 2005 Royals or the 2023 Royals, you can sit through this, right? When you hear people say, well, this team is so unwatchable, it's the most unwatchable product that I've ever seen. This is the worst Royals team ever. I don't agree with that. But also, yeah, as we have in our life, we've seen bad Royals teams and ones that were an eyesore. Like they just were never competitive. The season was over 2 weeks into April. But those teams also didn't have any expectations. And not just in baseball, but in sports. It is so tough to go through the grind of a season when you have that immense level of expectation. And this Royals team had that. This was a Royals team that was expected to compete for a division title, to get back to the postseason, to be one of the top teams in the American League. And even though they didn't have the type of offseason we all would have loved to see, you still like the pieces that were in place. And you felt that with a revamped bullpen, a new leadoff hitter, this team would be so entertaining from start to finish because they were going to be 10, 15, 20 games over 500. It hasn't worked out that way. It's not to say the season's over. I'm not going to do that at 49 and 53. There's still a lot of baseball left to be played. I'm not doing that for propaganda here to keep you listening. But I did want to, bring up this question because I've been asked many times before, how is it to do this podcast when the team's struggling? Right? Do you still enjoy it? Do you, get a little bit tired and doing the daily content of the team struggling? I'll be honest that there are definitely stretches. If they've lost 6 in a row, it's hard to come on this podcast and try to tell you why things are going to be better or if things are going to continue to be worse. You don't have the same motivation as I did when they were winners of 16 of 18, and they've gone on this stretch. And we know that the season is winding down. It's not quite midnight just yet, but the Royals have 10 days before the trade deadline. They are 5.5 back of a wild card spot, or 4.5, whatever it is. It feels interchangeable at this point. And they just have not been able to go on that tear. And so you look at these final 60-ish games of the season, and you start to wonder if they're not going to get to that point where they're a game out of a wild card spot. Is it still entertaining to watch this baseball team? And I know what the overwhelming answer in the comment section is going to be. You might have heard me say before that I feel there's going to be a point in the second half where things get really interesting. Like the Royals get within 3 games of a wild card spot, and they enter some series that is so big in terms of how the season is played out and what they're going to need to do. I'm still not 100% confident that teams that are ahead of them are going to stay ahead of them the entire time. The Royals are going to have some winnable series. They're going to have some favorable scheduling. They just haven't proven in 2025 that they have been able to do, much with it. They have been a team that has hovered around 500, few games below it. They've been a few games above it. And that just might be this team when it's all said and done, a 500 team, slightly below it, maybe 5 to 10 games below 500, and it's just more of a wash of a season. That's maybe the best way I can describe it. And it's tougher to say it's entertaining when you fall out of it, when you've had these expectations to be a playoff contender, because in years where you're rebuilding, you can look at those final 60 games and go, well, now let's just let the kids play. Let's just let all these rookies and these guys you want to see, go out there and showcase themselves a little bit. That's the entertaining part. So I'm going to be pretty interested in how we spin it with this team if they do sell off pieces and they're really not playing for much in the final 50 to 60 games. Now, will they have a Red Sox-like turnaround where they trade away one of their better players and then they win 10 in a row? I'm never going to say never because baseball's an odd sport like that. But if they are going to be entertaining and they're not going to be competing for a wild card spot come August and come September, I'm not sure they'll be completely buried like the Athletics have been, where you're double-digit games back of a wild card spot. It's not that I believe the Royals are going to keep winning and go on some sort of tear. It's more so that I don't think any of the teams ahead of them are going to pull away to that level. I see the Royals hovering around 500. Maybe they get a shot to go on a tear, but I've got them right now hovering around 500. So if they just stay 4.5 to 5.5 games back, for the rest of this season, they do need to iron out some things. In my opinion, they need to start figuring out what you need to look at in the offseason of 2025 going into 2026. You need to figure out if, your answer in center field is Kyle Isbell next year. You need to figure out what you're going to be willing to spend on a left fielder or another bat for this lineup. You're going to need to figure out if Salvador Perez is your opening day catcher again. You're going to need to figure out what you're going to do with your bullpen. You got guys that are coming up on contracts, and that will be answered a lot, I'd imagine, at the trade deadline. But to be entertaining, you almost have to start answering those hard questions in those final 50 to 60 games. And if you have new blood, fresh blood on the team, that does make it entertaining. But I would love to see some guys get some at-bats that need to have a little bit of a tryout. It's not to say the Royals are going to bottom out and be 20, 25 games under 500 when it's all said and done. But if they keep hovering around 500, there are still good things that you can figure out in hopes of being entertaining in those final 50 games. And who knows, maybe you play better and you give yourself a fighting chance when it's all said and done. But I think you can look at this team and realize that they're just not as lucky and as fortunate as they were last year. The clean bill of health they had, building such a cushion earlier on in the season where they could really allow themselves to have a 6-7 game losing streak that late in the season, which we can recall at the end of August and into September. But they played such good baseball earlier in the year that they set themselves up to have that buffer room. Now there is no buffer room. The Royals can't afford another 6-game losing streak. And in fact, they need a 6-game winning streak. They need to win 10 of 11. They need to win 16 of 18. And that's how they can be entertaining. But if they're going to be a 500 team and you still have that hope of, well, they could catch fire at any point, I'd like to see some new blood on the team, which we'll probably get at the trade deadline. I'd like to see some younger guys get the opportunities. I'd like to see more of a tryout at certain positions, because going into the offseason, if you don't make the playoffs when it's all said and done, which they've got less than a 10% chance of doing so, you got to start looking to who you're going to replace them with and how much you're willing to spend and who you're going to be willing to trade away. All right, for our next segment, we are going to give a little bit of a hat tip to Rich Hill. What he did tonight at Wrigley Field, in my opinion, was very impressive. I'll give you my overall takeaways on his outing next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can catch us on wherever you listen to your podcast. Want to tell you about Supply House. Get the supplies you need for the site made for the skilled trades. That's Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts in every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off on your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. And whether the Royals are winning, they're losing, they're making moves, they're not making moves, you can always count on this podcast bringing you that daily content. I know that kind of goes against what I did yesterday, which we didn't have an episode, but I'll always try to make it up, which is what we're doing today. Had an episode before Game 2 in Chicago, having one late tonight, back to a normal schedule Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And don't worry, even if things get really bad and they get down in the dumps, we're not going anywhere. We're going to continue to bring the same energy that we've had all season long, and hopefully we get rewarded with it, because I really do love and appreciate all the comments we get, all the suggestions, all the questions. That's been so enjoyable to see going back to 2023 to even now. And even when the team's not playing well, not as fun as it was last year, I really do love taking the time going through what you guys are talking about, what you guys are asking, what you want to know about this team. So let's hope that things can turn around rather quickly and we get less nights like tonight. What you heard on Chance's postcast, it was just ugly. Nothing about that game was entertaining. And yes, this segment's more so about a hat tip to Rich Hill. He's a 45-year-old man, and he grinded through, 10 to 12 AAA starts, didn't have the greatest numbers, but he got his shot. He got his opportunity, And as we said in the first episode today, debuting for the Royals where he debuted for the Cubs 20 years ago at Wrigley Field. And I honestly thought early on in some of those at-bats, his stuff looked pretty good. It was moving. And I'll add to it, to throw 90-91 as a 45-year-old, that's pretty impressive. I remember when Jamie Moyer, appeared at, 49 or 50? He was lobbing in, low 80s at that point. But Rich Hill can still run it up to high 80s, low 90s. He's got tremendous spin on his slider and his curveball, and he did far more than I thought he would be capable of. I said, give the Royals 2 innings. 2 innings of 1-run ball. I'll absolutely take it. If it's 2 innings of 2-run ball, I can live with it. You are a 45-year-old pitcher pitching against an incredibly talented offense in a hitter-friendly ballpark, packed crowd. I was not going to be asking 5 innings of Rich Hill. But 5 innings he went, and he gave up 3 runs. Only one of them was earned. His defense completely let him down in the second inning. Nick Lofton, he got a 107-mile-an-hour smash at third base. So I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit and saying that was tailor-made. Michael Garcia probably makes that play. Still, it's not an easy routine double play ball. It was crushed. But that could have been double play ball. Salvi, that's a mistake I can't give an excuse for. He just dropped a double play ball. And Rich Hill still found a way to get out of it, giving up only 2 runs. Now, the Cubs were swiping bases left and right off of him. They picked up something where they felt it was going to be very easy to take advantage of that. And the Royals, who were so good at catching runners, they had no chance tonight. I mean, the Cubs were just picking it up like John Lester was on the mound. He wasn't going to throw over to first base. But Rich Hill, at his age, what he was asked to do, I do tip my cap. It's not going to be maybe well received that I'm giving him a hat tip for going 5 innings and the Royals lost 6-0. What I will say, though, is if he would have gone an inning or 2 and given up 5 or 6 right there, and you're having to go to the bullpen, you lose 11-1, and you use 5 or 6 different pitchers, it's putting a lot of strain and a lot of pressure on Seth Lugo. They do have the off day on Thursday before coming home to take on Cleveland for 3. But Rich Hill going 5 innings, 1 earned run, that's really impressive. This was not against, the Pirates at home. This was not against the Rockies or the White Sox. This was against the team that is going to be one of the top seeds in the National League when it's all said and done. And if that's the only start that Rich Hill makes, I got to commend him. And he might get another opportunity. I don't know. If Michael Lorenzen's not ready to go next Tuesday or Wednesday against Atlanta, I guess it would be Sunday or Monday now that I think about it. I guess Rich Hill will give it another shot. He'll get to pitch at Kauffman Stadium, so more of a hitter-friendly ballpark, and against a team that's not performing at the same level of the Cubs. That was cool to see, though. If you can recall in our episode a few hours ago, I said as a baseball fan, this is entertaining to me. And that kind of goes hand in hand with our conversation in the first segment here. Well, can they be entertaining if they're not in a playoff spot? I'm not going to rely on 45-year-old Rich Hill starts to keep me entertained in the second half. That's why I said watching younger players, seeing fresh blood on the team, them getting opportunities, building for 2026 can make you entertaining. Because if you play good baseball to close out the season, now you got some momentum. Even if it doesn't result in October baseball, you can take some momentum into the offseason. Rich Hill's not going to be in Kansas City next year, and he might not be in the MLB next year. But the fact that he got back and he put together a pretty good start against a great team, that is cool for baseball. And if he gets another start and he goes 5 innings, a 1-run ball, and that's it, that's his time in Kansas City, that's a great way to go out. To tell everybody, tell your kids, tell your grandkids that at 45 years old, I was able to still pitch somewhat efficiently for back-to-back outings. And I don't know. I mean, you look to what this team has in August and September. Would you rather have Rich Hill or Sam Long in the bullpen if Daniel Lynch's injury lingers a little bit? I'd probably go with Rich Hill. Same type of role that Sam Long has. I don't see any harm with it. That might be worth a look for the Royals, especially if he pitches well against Atlanta on Monday or Tuesday, if he does make that start. But to be at that age and to pitch in a ballpark like that against an offense like that. And quite frankly, he should have gotten out of that, fifth inning with it being 1-0 Cubs. And you still feel like you have an outside chance of winning that game. But he just didn't get any run support. And ask Michael Wacha. I'm sure he talked to Michael Wacha at some point in that game. I doubt they talked about the run support that Michael Wacha gets. That's a frustrating part of it, though. He did his job, though. And we're going to look back over the weekend, hopefully, if the Royals play well against Cleveland, and point to that game and say the bullpen was pretty rusted because Noah Cameron was able to grind through 6 innings, and then Rich Hill was able to work through 5 innings. It was not a super clean outing. There were a couple of, at-bats and plate appearances where I went, that looks like a 45-year-old on the mound. Not being as aggressive in the zone. His stuff just doesn't have too much life to it. But I'd imagine if you threw a lot of 45-year-old arms that have been out of baseball for a while and gave them as much time as Rich Hill had in Omaha to get right for a start like that, over 75% of them are going to get bombed at an outing like that. And Rich Hill didn't. It was not a super pretty and I guess I would say gripping outing. It wasn't anything that left your jaw on the floor. He did enough. He did enough where if the Royals offense had half of what they did last night, they win that game. And you'd be able to say that what Rich Hill did was incredibly valuable. You got shut out, though. And now you're going to turn in tomorrow. You'll hand it over to your number one trade chip. And I am sure the Cubs will have all eyes on what Seth Lugo does tomorrow. So let's talk about that. It'll be maybe his last showcase. He'll have one more start before July 31st, I believe, to showcase again if the Royals are moving him. But what better team to go up against in Chicago than the Cubs, a team that would probably like Seth Lugo in the rotation in August. So let's talk about the series finale next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. Catch us on wherever you listen to your podcast. Want to tell you about the title sponsor for the second time today in FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Now, I didn't make the picks for tonight's game. Glad I didn't. I feel I would have been wrong on every single one of them. But I'll turn to tomorrow. I'm going to take the over on hits for Vinny Pasquantino. We got the day off. We'll be a little bit more rested. And I'm going to take the over on innings pitched for Seth Lugo. So 2 Royals picks there. Maybe they can salvage, or no, I shouldn't say salvage. Maybe they can just take the series tomorrow with a win before they have the off day and head back home for a homestand that features the Cleveland Guardians and the Atlanta Braves. We're coming down to less than 10 days for the MLB trade deadline, and we've had our discussions about what we think the Royals might do, buying and selling, a little bit of both, who the number one trade chip is. That's Seth Lugo, no surprise there. If anybody else would generate a ton of interest, and will they make a move that's very expected, and it'll be about a player that we've talked about that we believe the Royals should target, or is it going to be somebody totally off the wall that we're not even discussing? That is the excitement part, which, again, I'm tying it back to the first segment today. What is got the juices flowing for me, that the deadline is going to feature some moves, and the Royals are going to make moves one way or the other, buying or selling. And for Seth Lugo, he knows, and the Royals know, these next 2 starts could go a long way in what they get for him if that is their decision. If he goes and shoves against Chicago tomorrow, let's say 7 innings, he shuts him out over 7, Royals win 3-0, and they go back home and, they take, let's say 2 of 3. I'm speaking hypothetically here. And again, this is more so of the highest possible outcome it could be, the best possible outcome it could be. Let's say they go 5-1 against Cleveland and Atlanta. Seth Lugo pitches well in both of those starts. that would put them over 500, right? Or maybe, I think it'd be one game over 500 if they were, because they're 49 and 53. Oh, no, I think that would put them exactly at 500. They would be 54 and 54 going into that off day for the All-Star break. Or I could be a little bit off on that now that I think about it. But anyways, we know it's either 500, one game over, one game under. They could have their decision. Well, Seth Lugo's pitching really well. We're now 3.5 games back, or maybe 2.5 games back of a playoff spot. We're going to hold on to him. Or they could say, we are 2.5, 3.5 games back, but we still need offensive help, and Seth Lugo can be the guy to get us the offensive help that we need. And that doesn't mean that we're punting on the season. It just means that we feel we need to acquire another arm that can give us a boost, but more importantly, we need to give this offense a boost and make sure that they continue to look closer to what they looked like on Monday than they did tonight when they got shut out 6-0. I'll also say this, because I saw a lot of people on Twitter that were upset about the Royals' performance. It was an ugly game. It was a bad one, and you chalk it up to one of those terrible games. Matthew Boyd's really, really good. He had just shut out the Yankees over 8 innings. I want to say he'd given up 2 earned runs in his last 4 starts. He had a sub 1.1 ERA over his last 7 starts, and he's got one of the lowest ERAs in the National League. That was not a scrub they were going up against. That was somebody who, by the way, was an all-star that just continued to dominate. And we shouldn't really be floored when the Royals get dominated by someone who's dominated everybody at home this year. He was undefeated at home with a low, 2 ERA going into tonight's game. But that's aside from the point here. Seth Lugo has this opportunity tomorrow to pitch well in front of this crowd, this team, where they could go, man, we really do need him. And I'm not going to say that it means everything, but it does mean a lot. When you get dominated by somebody you're interested in, which is why I believe it works out so well for the Cubs, it kind of just pushes you over the edge to maybe we do need to give up that guy that we were not willing to trade for him. Like if Seth Lugo's throwing 10 pitches tomorrow and low pitch count and the Royals are cruising, the Cubs may say, we had a bullpen game on Monday, and it's Colin Rea too starting tomorrow. So you got Matthew Boyd, but there's still a lot of uncertainty in that rotation. There's a lot of guys that are banged up in that rotation. And Seth Lugo throwing well and tossing a gem tomorrow may make them think this is a team that desperately needs that. Somebody that you just hand the ball to in 6 innings, automatic every single time. And Seth Lugo's been that for 2 years in Kansas City. He has just been the epitome of consistency. And he's also in a contract year. And he is going to be making a contract that is very similar to what Nathan Eovaldi got for the Rangers. Now, the Royals are in that position where they don't have to trade him. They could look at the deals that are offered to them and go, none of those are really going to help us this year or help us next year. Those guys, we're just not that high on. They could keep him on the roster. He could pitch out and finish out the 2025 season as strongly as he did last year. And they could have that negotiation the same way they did with Michael Walker, where the opt-out was coming. They had the qualifying offer. They were going to decline, and the Royals got an extension done. They could do the same thing with Seth Lugo. But that has to mean they've got a lot of confidence that he is going to re-sign with them. Because if you just don't really know, then you might want to move him here. And tomorrow's start could give you some leverage. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of this trade deadline, is that the Royals don't have to trade him, and there will be teams that are desperate enough. Are they going to be desperate, though, and overly desperate for a 35-year-old guy that's going to be a rental and doesn't have overpowering stuff? He more so relies on all this, discombobulation of hitters by throwing 10 different pitches. Is that going to work in the postseason? It really didn't for the Royals last year. Seth Lugo didn't work deep into the game in either of his starts against the Orioles and then against the Yankees. That's going to be something they factor in. Is he going to be burned out by the end of the year? We just gave up our number 1 prospect, our number 2 prospect for a guy that's not pitching as well as he was in the first half. Those are discussions that will be had. But tomorrow, no better timing and no better team you'd want to be facing than the Cubs for Seth Lugo. You want to showcase that you can be a huge help to them and you can get your current team a pretty big return. tomorrow's the time to do it. You go and shove for 6 or 7 innings, that trade value is only going to go up. Well, that's going to do it for our second episode of the night on Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals one of your first listens today. For your second, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, we're bringing you a recap of what happened in the series finale, what Seth Lugo did, and maybe some more trade chips, as well as previewing the upcoming homestand with the Guardians and the Braves. But until tomorrow, you take it easy, Kansas City.